The sun dipped behind the hills, casting long shadows over the quiet village of Umyoba. A woman knelt at the edge of the great river, her body trembling as sobs racked her frame. Her name was Adaku, and for years, she had carried the shame of barrenness like a heavy curse. The whispers followed her wherever she went. A woman who cannot bear children is no woman at all, they said. Her husband, Obina, was a wealthy man, respected in the land, but even his riches could not shield her from the scorn of society. She had tried everything, herbs from the village healer, sacrifices to the ancestors, and endless prayers, but the gods remained silent. Tonight, she had come to the river, her last hope. The elders spoke of the river goddess, a spirit of great power who granted children to the worthy and punished the arrogant. With trembling hands, Adaku scooped water into her palms and let it slip through her fingers. "O great goddess, I have come to you with a broken heart. If you will hear me, bless me with a child. I will cherish her, love her, and protect her all my days." The river was still, as if listening. A cold wind swept through the trees, and the water shimmered under the moonlight. Then, a voice, soft and powerful, echoed from the depths. "Your cry has been heard, Adaku. But remember, what is given can be taken. Raise her wisely, or face the river's wrath." Adaku gasped, her heart pounding. The water swirled before her, glowing with an otherworldly light. She felt something change within her, a warmth spreading through her body. When she rose to her feet, she knew her prayers had been answered. Weeks passed, and a miracle unfolded. Adaku's body changed, the sickness of pregnancy came upon her. The village, once filled with whispers of mockery, now hummed with awe. "She is with child," the women marveled. "The gods have shown mercy." But Adaku knew it was not just the gods. It was the river. One night, as she sat outside her hut, a soft mist rose from the river banks, creeping through the village like an unseen force. The wind carried a voice, deep, feminine, and ancient. "Adaku." She turned sharply. Before her stood a figure draped in flowing blue robes, her skin glistening like water under the moonlight. Her eyes held the depth of the ocean, endless and knowing. "The child you carry is not just yours," the goddess said. "She belongs to the river as well." Adaku's breath hitched. "What do you mean?" "Raise her with wisdom," the goddess warned. "Do not spoil her with riches, for wealth blinds the heart. And when the time comes, she will hear my call." Adaku bowed deeply, fear and gratitude swirling inside her. "I will do as you say, great mother of the river." The goddess smiled, but her eyes held a shadow of something unspoken. "See that you do." And with that, she vanished, leaving only the sound of water lapping at the shore. 9 months later, the cries of a newborn filled Adaku and Obina's grand home. A girl, beautiful beyond words, entered the world. Her skin glowed like morning sunlight, and her eyes shimmered with a strange, deep blue, like the river itself. "She will be called Cynthia," Adaku declared, cradling the baby in her arms. "A gift from the river." The village rejoiced at the child's birth. The same people who once mocked Adaku now came bearing gifts, eager to witness the miracle. Obina, overwhelmed with joy, spared no expense in celebrating their daughter's arrival. He slaughtered cows, filled the tables with food, and showered Cynthia with the finest clothes and golden jewelry. But amidst the laughter and music, only Adaku remembered the goddess's warning, "Do not spoil her with riches, for wealth blinds the heart." As the years passed, she tried to be firm, but Obina, blinded by love, could not bear to see Cynthia cry. Whatever she wanted, she got. And so, from childhood, Cynthia was raised not only as a gift but as a princess. Cynthia grew into a striking young girl with a presence that drew attention wherever she went. Though she was human, there was something different about her. She never fell ill, and she could hold her breath underwater far longer than any child her age. She loved the river more than anything. While other children feared its deep waters, Cynthia felt at home in it. She would spend hours by the shore, her fingers tracing patterns in the sand, listening to whispers in the waves that no one else could hear. One evening, as she played near the water, she heard a voice, soft yet commanding. "Come closer, child." She turned sharply. The water rippled, and for a brief moment, she saw a figure beneath the surface, shimmering eyes watching her, a smile both kind and knowing. Cynthia gasped and stepped back. But strangely, she was not afraid. From that night on, she began having dreams of the ocean, dreams where she swam in the depths with creatures unknown to man. Sometimes, she would wake up feeling as though she had been somewhere else entirely. But her parents did not notice these changes. They only saw their beloved daughter, growing more beautiful and radiant by the day, the pride of their household. Little did they know, the river was watching. Obina and Adaku, blinded by love, gave Cynthia everything she desired. Gold and silk filled her wardrobe, her every whim granted before she could even ask. Servants bowed at her feet, and no one dared to discipline her. At first, Cynthia was kind and gentle. She shared her toys with other children, spoke softly to her elders, and loved her parents dearly. But as she grew, so did her entitlement. She became used to getting her way. If something displeased her, she would cry, and Obina would fix it. If she wanted something, she would only have to ask, and it was hers. Adaku saw the change. She remembered the river goddess's warning, but each time she tried to correct Cynthia, Obina would say, "Let her enjoy life, my love. She is our miracle. Why should she suffer?" So Adaku remained silent. Cynthia learned that beauty and wealth could make the world bow to her feet. And with each passing day, she drifted further from the wisdom of the river. But the river never forgets. Cynthia's beauty and wealth made her the center of attention wherever she went. Men admired her, women envied her, and elders praised her as a blessing to her family. But deep inside, a restless hunger grew, a desire for more. As she entered her late teens, she began spending less time at home and more with friends from the city. They were not like the village children, these were young men and women who spoke of freedom, pleasure, and luxury. They dressed in designer clothes, drove expensive cars, and lived as though the world owed them happiness. One night, Cynthia's closest friend, Amora, took her to her first nightclub. "Welcome to real life," Amora whispered as they stepped into the dimly lit club. The music pounded like a heartbeat, the air thick with the scent of alcohol and smoke. Cynthia's heart raced, not from fear, but from excitement. Here, no one cared who she was. No one asked if she was the river's child. They only saw a beautiful, wealthy girl ready to enjoy life. She danced, she laughed, and for the first time, she felt free. That night marked the beginning of her transformation. Cynthia became addicted to the nightlife. She partied in the most exclusive clubs, drank the finest champagne, and surrounded herself with people who only cared about pleasure. Her parents noticed the change. Adaku's heart grew heavy as she watched her daughter slip further away. "Cynthia, you're barely home these days," she said one morning when Cynthia returned after another wild night. Cynthia, still dressed in last night's outfit, sighed. "Mother, I'm grown. You and father wanted me to enjoy life, didn't you?" "But not like this," Adaku whispered. Obina, though worried, was still blind to the danger. "She's young," he told his wife. "She will outgrow it." But Cynthia did not outgrow it. She began smoking, first casually, then frequently. She started spending recklessly, throwing money at luxuries she didn't need. Expensive jewelry, imported perfumes, designer shoes, nothing was ever enough. At night, she danced until dawn. By day, she slept, ignoring her parents' pleas. She had everything. Yet, deep inside, something was missing. And the river was watching. One night, after a long evening of partying, Cynthia staggered into her room, her head spinning from alcohol. She collapsed onto her bed, but as soon as she closed her eyes, she was no longer in her room. She was underwater. She could breathe. She could see. Around her, the ocean stretched endlessly, glowing with an eerie blue light. Strange creatures swam past her, their eyes glowing like stars. In the distance, she saw a grand palace, shimmering beneath the waves. Then, a voice echoed through the water. "You do not belong there, Cynthia. Come home." She jolted awake, gasping for breath. Her body was dry, but her lips tasted of salt water. Panting, she looked at her reflection in the mirror. For a brief moment, her eyes were no longer brown, they were the deep, glowing blue of the ocean. Cynthia shivered. Something was happening to her. And she didn't understand what. Days passed, but Cynthia couldn't shake the strange visions. Each time she closed her eyes, she found herself in the ocean, surrounded by shadows whispering her name. She ignored it, drowning herself deeper in pleasure, believing it was just her mind playing tricks on her. But the river had grown impatient. One evening, as she prepared for another night out, something called her to the water. She stepped outside and found herself walking, as if in a trance, toward the riverbank. The moon hung high, its silver light reflecting off the restless waves. As soon as she stepped into the water, a strong current wrapped around her ankles, pulling her forward. Cynthia gasped, struggling to free herself, but the water was alive. Then, the river goddess's voice echoed from the depths. "You have lost yourself, child." Cynthia froze, her heart pounding. "You were given a gift, yet you waste it on vanity and sin. Have you forgotten where you came from?" Terror gripped her. I don't understand," she whispered. The water swirled around her, pulling her deeper, but before she could scream, the current suddenly released her. She collapsed on the riverbank, gasping for air. "This is your last warning, Cynthia. Choose wisely." The river fell silent. The night remained still. Cynthia shivered and ran home, trying to convince herself it had all been a dream. But deep down, she knew it wasn't. When Cynthia walked through the marketplace, people stared at her differently. No longer with admiration, but with suspicion. Even her father, Obinna, who had always dismissed warnings, now looked at her with uncertainty. "Cynthia," he said one evening, "tell me the truth. What have you been doing at the river?" Cynthia hesitated. Could she tell him? Could she even explain it to herself? She started, but the words stuck in her throat. Obinna's eyes darkened. "They say you are not one of us." Her chest tightened. "They say you belong to the water." Cynthia felt tears sting her eyes. "I am still your daughter," she whispered. But was she? And did the river agree? One night, as she stood at the water's edge, the current shifted violently. The sky darkened, and the voice of the river goddess boomed through the air. "You were warned, Cynthia. You cannot serve two masters." The water rose, wrapping around her ankles, dragging her forward. "No. Wait," she screamed, but the river had made its choice. It pulled her under. She sank deep, deeper than ever before, until the light of the surface faded. Creatures of the deep watched her with glowing eyes. The current whispered of a fate long decided. And then she saw her. The river goddess stood before her, tall and terrible. "You have lived selfishly, torn between two worlds. Now, you must choose, once and for all." Cynthia trembled. She had always thought she had control. She had always believed she could live both lives. But she was wrong. It was time to decide. Land or sea? Human or merfolk? Which would she choose? She hesitated, but before she could answer, a sudden force pulled her away. Someone had dived into the water after her. Her mother. Adaku had seen everything. She had followed her daughter, knowing the river was coming for her. And when it pulled Cynthia under, she did not hesitate. She jumped. The water wrapped around her like cold hands, but she fought against it, reaching for her child. Cynthia's eyes widened in shock as Adaku grasped her hand. No, Mama. You can't be here. But Adaku only smiled, tears mixing with the ocean. You are my greatest gift. And I will not lose you. The goddess watched, unmoved. A life must be given. Adaku turned to her daughter, her face filled with love. Then take mine. A surge of power erupted around them. Cynthia screamed as Adaku's body began to dissolve into light, merging with the water. The ocean roared. And then, silence. Cynthia washed ashore at dawn. Her once glowing eyes had dimmed. She was human now, fully, painfully human. The river had taken back its gift. She had gained everything and lost the one thing that mattered most. And so, every night, she sat by the riverbank, listening to the waves, hoping, praying, that one day, she would hear her mother's voice in the water. But the river was silent. The river never forgets. And neither did she. Please like and subscribe for more.